The perception of poverty, the fallacy of the label.
What do you see when you think of poverty?
I usually think of homeless people on the street.
What do you do to help them?
Well, they make me feel uncomfortable, so I just hurry off to work and pretend they don't exist.
Most people conceptualize poverty as individuals with these characteristics. Society creates the distinctions amongst individuals, labeling these people as poor. As Dorothy Allison experienced, she was the they everyone talks about, the ungrateful poor. But these characteristics did not make her poor.
Then what makes someone poor? I thought being poor meant not having enough money for food or housing.
A lack of food, clothing, shelter, or utility is not what makes someone poor. It is these mental and social conditions.
Poverty is any situation in which a person lacks the capability to envision and then create a reality separate from the one imposed on him or her by society.
Imagine the light spectrum to be humanity. If labels are not given to create distinctions, as in the top portion of the picture, all consider themselves equal, though differences do exist. But when labels are used to distinguish some groups or individuals, such as the poor, certain groups are marginalized. As Dorothy Allison notes from personal experience, this marginalization causes people to feel much exclusion, fear, self-hatred, and lifelong hopelessness. And once this is felt, the individual then lacks the capability to hope for a better life. Labeling someone as poor transforms him or her into a mirror, only capable of reflecting society's views of him or her, or the depravity of his or her circumstances. We must keep a full picture of humanity without giving economic distinctions.
Our definition of poverty incorporates Sen and Nussbaum's capabilities approach. We are concerned with combined capabilities, which, as Nussbaum states, are the freedoms or opportunities created by a combination of personal abilities and the political, social, and economic environment. It is important to distinguish between capabilities and functionings. Nussbaum defines functionings as beings and doings that are the outgrowths or realizations of capabilities. Nussbaum proposes 10 central capabilities. Central capabilities are what a person needs to live a dignified human life. She also proposes a human rights approach. The common ground between the capabilities approach and human rights approach, according to Nussbaum, lies in the idea that all people have some core entitlements just by virtue of their humanity, and that it is a basic duty of society to respect and support these entitlements. Nussbaum uses the capabilities approach not only as a way to define, but to measure poverty.
In our measure of poverty, we want to capture the deprivation of income, healthcare, education, autonomy, and social justice within communities. If a person has adequate fulfillment of these things, he or she should have sufficient central capabilities. For example, if a community provides its members with adequate education, it supports the fulfillment of these central capabilities. Education helps people develop internal capabilities, such as expressing their thoughts, being able to practically reason, affiliating with peers and teachers, and being able to better control their environment through knowledge. Income neither takes away nor provides capabilities. Money is only valuable instrumentally. For example, an affluent person can lack central capabilities, making him or her poor. Also consider the case in which an individual chooses to fast for religious purposes. Is he or she poor because hunger is experienced? No, this person is not impoverished because in this case, choice exists. Conversely, an individual within a community in which everyone lives below the poverty line may not consider him or herself to be poor, because those with whom he or she affiliates do not label him or her to be such, and thus dignity is not compromised. In many ways, poverty is a measure of comparison, creating distinctions amongst certain groups and individuals.
The official poverty measure is how the government currently measures poverty. Using the OPM, anyone who falls below the poverty line is poor, and anyone above the poverty line is not poor. The poverty line is based on a threshold which is 3 times the cost of a minimum food diet in 1963. This threshold is outdated because people now spend closer to 1/6 of their budget on food. The OPM only accounts for gross, before tax, cash income. As the OPM shows, measuring poverty based on money does not give us an accurate representation of who is poor. Some of the problems with the OPM are addressed by the SPM, the Supplemental Poverty Measurement. The SPM updates the threshold, accounts for cohabitation, geographical differences, non-cash benefits, and non-discretionary expenses. However, the SPM still does not give us an accurate representation of who is poor, because it still focuses on money and material resources.
We are not defining and measuring poverty because we care how much money people have. We are defining and measuring poverty because we want to know how people are doing. This is why we use the capabilities approach to define and measure poverty.
Some may argue that the capabilities approach is not an accurate way to define or measure poverty, because capabilities cannot be measured. Nussbaum addresses the fallacy of measurement, which says just because something can't be measured doesn't mean it isn't important. As Nussbaum states, we shouldn't allow the measurement to dictate the problems we address.
As shown, defining and measuring poverty through material means is not accurate because poverty, at its root, is about whether people can live a dignified life or not. Using the capabilities approach, we determine that poverty is any situation in which a person lacks the capability to envision and then create a reality separate from the one imposed on him or her by society. We also use the capabilities approach to measure poverty by capturing the deprivation of income, healthcare, education, and social justice in communities. Sufficiency in these areas can support the development of Nussbaum's 10 central capabilities.
So what now?
Well, the first step to understanding poverty entails denouncing preconceived notions of who is poor. In Allison's case, she is poor not solely due to her family's economic status, but how she is judged and defined by society. She lives in a reality in which the inescapable impact of being poor in a condition of poverty that this society finds shameful, contemptible, and somehow deserved has had dominion over her to such an extent that she has spent her life trying to overcome or deny it. Due to this mentality, she feels entitlement is a matter of feeling like we, rather than they. You think you have a right to things, a place in the world, and it is so intrinsically a part of you that you cannot imagine people like me, people who seem to live in your world, who don't have it. Allison's story represents the cyclical nature of poverty and the harmful effects of labeling someone as poor. She questions what there is to work for, to save money for, to fight for, or struggle against. We had generations before us to teach us that nothing ever changed. and that those who did try to escape failed.
So how does poverty relate to me?
Any violation of individual dignity endangers the dignity of humanity. Experiencing poverty is a possibility of life, and income lowness need not be present for one to be poor. Instead, a central capability must be threatened.